Have you ever wondered why the world, in its vastness, was once covered entirely in water? Picture a time when the earth lay shrouded in violence and corruption, where darkness overshadowed the lives of every man, woman, and child. Humanity, once created in divine innocence, had turned away from the Creator's path, giving rise to a world that no longer resembled the purity it was meant to hold. People went about their lives, consumed by their own desires, oblivious to the fate that awaited. Yet, in this sea of lawlessness there was one man, a man who walked with God. His name was Noah. Noah lived in a world lost to wickedness, surrounded by the echo of wrongdoings that filled the land like a relentless storm. While others had turned away, Noah alone remained faithful, his heart pure, his spirit strong. He was a man of quiet obedience and deep conviction. And though his neighbors looked upon him with indifference, Noah found favor in the eyes of God. Then, one fateful day, the Lord spoke to Noah, a voice not of wrath, but of sorrow and resolve. "The end of all flesh has come before me," God said, "for the earth is filled with violence through them. I will destroy them with the earth." These words were not spoken lightly. The Creator, who once breathed life into every being, had seen enough. Yet, amid this promise of judgment, there was mercy. God gave Noah command and escape. "Make yourself an ark," he said, describing with precise details its length, breadth, and height. "You shall make it with lower, second, and third decks. And behold, I will bring floodwaters on the earth to destroy from under heaven all flesh in which is the breath of life." Imagine Noah's heart as he heard these words. He, a simple man, was entrusted with a mission that would require not only his strength, but his faith. In the face of coming destruction, Noah's obedience would become the very means of salvation for his family, a beacon of hope amid the darkness that had overtaken the world. Now the earth waited. As Noah took his first steps toward building the ark, hammering nails and laying beams, every strike of his tools echoed across the land as a warning. The people of that time, living without a second thought, looked upon him with disdain. They mocked and questioned, unable to see the purpose behind his labor. Day by day, year by year, the ark took shape, a testament to Noah's faith and an ominous reminder of the approaching storm. Would the world understand the warning before it was too late? Or would Noah's silent witness be overlooked until the very last moment? Before we dive deeper into the story of our biblical history today on Noah's Ark and the flood, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying this journey. Your support allows us to keep producing Bible-based educational content, and we'd love for you to join our community of learners and seekers. Just click subscribe and remember to turn on notifications so you won't miss any future episodes. In the days of Noah, the earth was unlike anything we know today, a world filled with corruption, violence, and deceit. Genesis tells us that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. The Creator, who had once looked upon his creation and declared it good, now saw how far humanity had strayed. As men multiplied on the earth, so did their transgressions. They exploited, they fought, they coveted, and they desecrated the very creation that sustained them. It was an age when justice was forgotten, where selfishness reigned and integrity had been cast aside. The land itself seemed burdened by the weight of humanity's sins, and the cries of innocent blood called out from the soil. This wasn't just the failings of a few individuals. The entire generation had turned from God, their hearts hardened and unrepentant. Amid this darkness, however, there was a single, flickering light, a man named Noah. Noah was unlike those around him. He was described as a just man, perfect in his generations. He walked with God, a quiet yet profound act of defiance against the corrupt world that surrounded him. He lived by faith and righteousness, honoring God in a time when most had forgotten their Maker. His very presence was a rebuke to the sin that filled the land, a reminder of the goodness humanity could still hold. And so God looked upon Noah with favor. While others had abandoned their Creator, Noah remained faithful, his heart a sanctuary of obedience and reverence. God spoke to Noah in the quiet of his spirit, sharing with him a plan, not of revenge, but of renewal. "The end of all flesh has come before me," God declared, "for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth." But in this judgment, there was also mercy, a promise of preservation for the righteous. God revealed his plan to cleanse the earth, to wash away the violence and corruption, giving humanity a fresh beginning. And Noah, chosen for his faith and integrity, was given a command that would test the strength of his obedience: to build an ark, a refuge in the coming storm. The instructions were detailed, precise, down to the last cubit. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood, make rooms in the ark, and cover it inside and outside with pitch. The ark would be 300 cubits in length, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high, with lower, second, and third decks. God's design was clear, and Noah's task was great. And so, Noah began his work. In the eyes of his neighbors, it must have seemed like madness. Year after year, Noah labored, each plank and beam placed with care. With every swing of his hammer, he proclaimed a warning, a silent testament to the judgment that was coming. Yet the people laughed, turning a blind eye to the signs of the times, their hearts too callous to heed the warning before them. Still, Noah pressed on, steadfast in his faith, undeterred by the scoffers and unbelief around him. He built as he was instructed, preparing for a day only he seemed to believe would come, a day when the heavens would open, the waters would rise, and God's word would be fulfilled. Remember to click subscribe and remember to turn on notifications so you won't miss any future episodes. As Noah walked in faith, there came a day when the Lord spoke to him with a message that would change everything. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood, God instructed. This was not merely a request, but a divine command, given with precise details, each measurement chosen with purpose. Make rooms in the ark, and cover it inside and out with pitch, the voice of the Creator continued. The ark was to be a sanctuary, a place of refuge capable of withstanding the waters that would soon consume the earth. The scale of the project was immense. The ark would be 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. To us today, this translates to roughly 450 feet in length, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet tall, a massive vessel the size of a small cargo ship. It would have 3 levels, creating room for animals, provisions, and Noah's family. This ark, in its immense size, was unlike anything the world had ever seen, a sight that would surely draw attention from all who passed by. As Noah listened to God's instructions, he must have felt a profound sense of awe. Perhaps he felt the weight of the task set before him, a task that seemed impossible to the human mind. This was not a mere boat. It was a fortress against the storm, a shelter against a judgment that no one else could yet understand. Noah was preparing for a flood the world had never known, an event beyond imagination. Despite the magnitude of the task, Noah did not hesitate. Scripture tells us that Noah did according to all that God commanded him. Every day he took to his tools and began to build, placing his faith in each board, each joint, each layer of pitch that would seal the ark from the waters to come. As he worked, one can imagine the emotions that stirred within him. There was likely awe at the voice of the Creator guiding him, reverence for the task he had been given, and perhaps moments of questioning. How would this ark withstand the flood? How would he gather the animals? And what would he say to those who doubted him, to those who looked upon his work with scorn? For surely there were skeptics, those who scoffed and mocked, as they saw this great structure rising from the ground. Year after year Noah worked, and year after year they questioned him. The very people who saw him laboring dismissed his warnings, seeing the ark as nothing more than an oddity, an eccentric project of a man who claimed to hear the voice of God. Yet Noah held fast, each day's work a testament to his unwavering faith. Despite the doubt that surrounded him, despite the loneliness of his calling, he pressed on, knowing that his obedience was a matter of life and death. And in his heart, he carried a quiet assurance, a trust that the same God who commanded him to build would be the one to see it through. The ark began to take form, its massive beams and sealed rooms coming together, a fortress in the making. It stood as a sign, a declaration of things unseen, a silent testament to the patience and perseverance of one man's faith. And though the world around him turned away, caught up in their own ways, Noah continued, trusting in the purpose laid before him, preparing for the day when the heavens would open and the promise would be fulfilled. As the ark neared completion, God spoke once more to Noah, revealing that the time had come to gather those who would join him in this refuge from the coming flood. It was now that the miraculous nature of God's plan became clear. Animals of every kind, from the smallest creatures that crawled along the ground to the great beasts that roamed the wilderness, began to arrive at the ark. Pairs of animals, male and female, came from far and near, their paths directed by unseen hands. Lions and lambs, eagles and sparrows, creatures of all shapes and sizes walked, crawled and flew towards the ark, obedient to the call of the Creator. This was no ordinary gathering. It was as if all of creation was bearing witness to God's promise and judgment. To those who saw it, this sight alone was a marvel, a testament to the power that had set the flood in motion. Inside the ark, Noah carefully arranged them, ensuring that each creature had a place. He saw to their needs, preparing food and bedding, filling every level of the ark as God had commanded. And in this moment, as he led these animals into the shelter he had built, Noah's obedience to God's command was once again confirmed. He, along with the animals, was part of a divine plan that reached beyond his understanding. Then Noah gathered his family, his wife, his sons Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their wives. These 8 souls would be all that remained of humanity, chosen not by their own merit, but by Noah's faithfulness. Together, they entered the ark, following Noah as he followed the voice of God. As they crossed the threshold, leaving behind the world they had known, one can imagine the mixture of emotions that filled their hearts. Gratitude for God's mercy, perhaps sorrow for the world left behind, and the unknown future that lay within those walls of gopher wood. Then, God himself shut the door. With the closing of that door, there was a finality, a solemn silence. The time of warning had passed, and the promise was now upon them. Outside, the skies darkened, and the first drops of rain began to fall. At first, it may have seemed ordinary, a sprinkle, perhaps a passing storm. But soon the heavens opened, and water poured down with an intensity no one had ever witnessed. The earth itself began to yield water from beneath, as springs burst forth from the depths, releasing torrents that met the rain from above. As the waters rose, those who had laughed and scoffed at Noah's warnings began to see the truth. Their laughter turned to cries as the flood swept across the land, filling the valleys, consuming fields, homes, and towns. Rivers overflowed, and mountains that once seemed immovable were gradually submerged. The ark, a solitary vessel in a world of chaos, began to rise with the waters, lifted by the very force that brought destruction. Inside, Noah and his family could feel the ark moving, swaying with the current as the earth transformed around them. They were safe, held in the hands of God, but outside, the world they had known was vanishing beneath the relentless flood. For 40 days and 40 nights, the rain did not cease. The earth was covered, with even the highest peaks disappearing beneath the depths. Life as it had been known was no more. All that remained was the ark, adrift on an endless ocean, a beacon of survival in a world wiped clean. Remember to click subscribe and remember to turn on notifications so you won't miss any future episodes. As we pause to reflect on Noah's journey, we find a story not just of obedience, but of unwavering faith in the face of extraordinary pressure. Noah was a man who stood alone, surrounded by people who mocked his every effort, who dismissed his warnings as foolishness. He was given a command that defied all logic, a call to prepare for a flood when rain itself was a rarity, to construct a massive ark in the middle of dry land. Imagine, for a moment, being in Noah's shoes. The years stretched on as he labored, day by day, preparing for an event that seemed beyond reason. People would pass by, their voices filled with laughter and disbelief. Family members, neighbors, perhaps even friends might have questioned his sanity. Yet Noah remained steadfast, holding on to a truth he couldn't yet see, trusting in a God he knew would not fail him. In today's world, we are often called to follow paths that others don't understand. There may be times when doing the right thing feels lonely, when faith requires us to walk in a direction that goes against the grain. Just as Noah faced ridicule, we too can find ourselves standing alone, challenged by the values and pressures around us. Yet Noah's story reminds us that true faith doesn't waver in the face of doubt. It stands firm, anchored in the knowledge that obedience to God is worth more than the approval of others. Ask yourself, what would you have done in Noah's place? Would you have had the courage to persevere year after year in the face of mockery and isolation? Would you have held firm, even as others turned away? Reflect on the times in your own life when you faced similar challenges. Perhaps there were moments when you felt called to take a step of faith, to follow a purpose that others couldn't understand. In those moments, Noah's story offers a powerful lesson. His life speaks to the strength found in obedience, the courage to stand firm when no one else will, and the reward that awaits those who trust in God's promises. As we continue, keep this question in your heart. How are you building your own ark of faith? What steps are you willing to take to remain faithful, even when the world around you doesn't see the purpose in your actions? Noah's journey is not just a tale of survival, but a reminder of the enduring strength that comes from trusting in God, no matter the cost. For 40 days and 40 nights, the rain poured down without ceasing. It was a deluge unlike anything the world had ever seen, with water rising higher each day, covering trees, fields, and finally even the tallest mountains. Inside the ark, Noah, his family, and all the animals waited, surrounded by the sounds of pounding rain and surging waves. Life inside the ark was a test of endurance. Though they were safe from the floodwaters, the isolation, the darkness, and the unchanging days stretched on endlessly. Each dawn was met not by sunlight, but by the steady beat of rain against the ark's wooden walls. Noah and his family could feel the sway of the ark as it drifted over an endless ocean, carried by the force of the waters below. In this place of waiting, patience became their daily bread. Together they developed routines to care for the animals, each family member taking on responsibilities to keep order and provide for the creatures God had entrusted to them. From feeding to cleaning to simply keeping their spirits high, every task was an act of faith, a reminder of the promise that kept them moving forward. One can only imagine the emotions that filled those 40 days. There was gratitude, surely, for the safety God had provided, but there were also moments of longing, perhaps fear of the unknown, and the weight of being cut off from the world they had once known. Outside, everything they had ever seen or known was gone, washed away in the flood. They had no way of knowing what awaited them when the waters would finally recede, no certainty beyond the ark's walls. Amidst the uncertainty, Noah and his family held on to the hope that had brought them this far. Their faith, tested day by day, was what carried them through each trial. Noah's wife and children, who had followed him into this unknown future, stood by him, trusting in the vision he had been given. And Noah himself, the man who had spent years building this refuge in obedience to God, remained steadfast, his hope anchored in the promise that had sustained him from the beginning. For 40 days they endured, knowing that God, who had shut them into the ark, would also be the one to deliver them from it. Each sunrise brought them closer to the day when they would once again stand upon dry ground. In the heart of this waiting, in the long and endless days, Noah and his family found strength, comforted by the assurance that they were not forgotten. They were held, carried through the storm by the same hands that had fashioned the earth itself. And so they waited, living by faith in the midst of the unknown, trusting in a promise that had yet to be fulfilled. Remember to click subscribe and remember to turn on notifications so you won't miss any future episodes. And then, after weeks of endless rain and days adrift on the open waters, there came a moment when the rain finally ceased. The sound of the downpour faded, leaving only the gentle creaking of the ark as it floated on the vast, quiet sea. The waters still stretched as far as the eye could see, but Noah and his family could sense a shift, a glimmer of hope that perhaps the end was near. God remembered Noah and all those within the ark. In his mercy, he caused a wind to pass over the earth, and slowly, the waters began to recede. The waves grew calmer, and the tides lowered, revealing glimpses of the land that lay hidden beneath the depths. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, as the floodwaters gradually retreated, pulled back by the hand of the Creator who had sent them. After many months of waiting, Noah took a raven and released it from the ark's window. The raven flew out, circling above the waters, searching for a place to land. Yet the world was still covered, with only the mountaintops beginning to emerge, and so the raven returned. Days later, Noah took a dove and released it as well, watching as it flew over the waves, seeking a resting place. When the dove returned, finding no solid ground, Noah knew the waters had not yet fully withdrawn. He waited patiently, releasing the dove again after 7 days. This time it returned with a fresh olive leaf in its beak, a simple, yet profound sign that life had begun to return to the earth. Trees had re-emerged, leaves were budding, and the waters were receding enough to reveal the first hints of dry land. Noah and his family felt a surge of relief and gratitude, knowing that God's promise was coming to fruition. Finally, after months of waiting, the ark came to rest upon the mountains of Ararat. As it settled on the high ground, Noah and his family felt the ark's movement come to a stop. They stood together, looking out over a changed world, filled with gratitude and awe for the journey that had brought them here. What once seemed endless now held the promise of a new beginning, a fresh start given by the mercy of their Creator. The floodwaters which had brought judgment upon the earth had receded. They could now see the land vast and open, waiting to be renewed. Noah's faith, his endurance, and his unwavering obedience had carried them through, and now they stood on the brink of a new world, blessed by God's mercy. As they prepared to step out of the ark, the air was filled with a sense of hope, a reminder that while judgment had come, mercy had also prevailed. The earth, cleansed and refreshed, lay before them a second chance for humanity, guided by the promise of the Creator, who had not forgotten them through the storm. As we reflect on the end of the flood, we see more than the close of a story. We see a powerful symbol of renewal, a journey through darkness that led to a new beginning. The flood was not just an act of judgment, it was a transformation, a cleansing that allowed for a fresh start. For Noah and his family, emerging from the ark was like stepping into a rebirth, an opportunity to rebuild, to live in a world made new. In our own lives, we too encounter seasons that feel like floods, times when we are overwhelmed, when everything we know seems washed away, leaving us adrift in uncertainty. These personal floods can take many forms: loss, hardship, isolation, or unexpected changes that shake the foundation of our lives. Yet, just as Noah trusted in God's promise, we are called to hold on to hope, even when the waters are at their highest. When we endure these challenges, there often comes a moment, just like Noah's first sight of dry land, where we see the first sign of change, the first glimpse of hope that things can be renewed. And as the waters recede, we find ourselves in a place of new growth, ready to rebuild and begin again. The story of Noah reminds us that, no matter how overwhelming our circumstances may feel, they will not last forever. God's mercy and love are present even through the storm. Take a moment to ask yourself, have you ever faced a flood in your own life? A time when you felt overwhelmed, uncertain, or at a loss? How did you hold on to hope when everything seemed submerged? And as you look back now, can you see the signs of renewal, the ways you emerge stronger and closer to the purpose God has set for you? Noah's journey out of the ark is a reminder that God's plans for us include not only moments of trial but also times of healing and restoration. Even after the flood, there is life, there is renewal, and there is the promise that we are never forgotten, held firmly by the one who brings us through the waters and sets us on solid ground. Remember to click subscribe and remember to turn on notifications so you won't miss any future episodes. As the floodwaters receded and Noah and his family stepped onto dry land, they found themselves in a world washed clean, a world that held both the weight of judgment and the promise of new beginnings. Together, they offered a sacrifice of thanksgiving to God, acknowledging His mercy and protection through the trials they had faced. Then, God spoke once more, delivering a promise that would shape the future of humanity. Looking upon Noah and his family, He made a covenant, a sacred, unbreakable vow. Never again, God declared, shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. In His words was a promise of hope, a reassurance that such a judgment would not befall humanity again. To seal this covenant, God set a sign in the heavens, a brilliant rainbow stretched across the sky. As the colors arched over the earth, they became a symbol, not only of God's mercy but of His enduring commitment to humanity. This rainbow was more than a natural phenomenon, it was a divine reminder. Every time it would appear, it would serve as a visible sign of God's promise, a bond between the Creator and His creation, a reminder that though humanity may falter, God's mercy would prevail. For Noah and his family, the rainbow was a beacon of hope, a vivid declaration that the worst had passed, and that they were stepping into a renewed world under God's care. Each time they looked upon it, they would remember that God's love and forgiveness were as constant as the bow in the sky, a reminder that even in judgment He is faithful to restore. And for us today, the rainbow continues to hold this same significance. It stands as a testament to God's mercy, His patience, and His unbreakable commitment to all who walk upon the earth. It is a symbol that, despite the storms we may face, His promise of protection and renewal remains. The covenant with Noah is a message across generations, telling us that God's relationship with humanity is founded on love and grace, a foundation that no flood can ever wash away. As we look upon the rainbow, we are invited to remember this covenant, to trust that God's promises endure, and to live with the same faith that carried Noah through his trials. The world may change, storms may come, but God's mercy remains as steadfast as the rainbow that stretches across the sky, a constant reminder of His enduring love and commitment to each of us. As we reach the end of Noah's journey, his story invites each of us to reflect on our own lives and the ways we, too, have experienced moments of God's mercy. Just as God watched over Noah through the storm and brought him to safety, There are times in our own lives when we can feel His guidance, even through the darkest moments. The floodwaters may rise, the storms may rage, but His promise to be with us remains unshaken. So let's take a moment to share and encourage one another. In the comments below, I invite you to share your thoughts. Have you ever experienced a time when God's mercy felt especially close to you? How did you see His hand at work in your life, even when the way forward seemed uncertain? Your stories might be the inspiration someone else needs today. And as we share, we strengthen our faith and remind each other that we are not alone on this journey. Let's continue to walk in faith, supporting one another as Noah's family did, as a community bound by trust in God's promises. If this story has resonated with you, consider subscribing to join us for more stories and lessons that inspire hope and strengthen faith. Together we'll explore more of the Bible's powerful teachings, discovering how God's Word speaks to us today, guiding us through both the challenges and the blessings we encounter. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the story of Noah's Ark and the flood, a story of judgment, mercy, and the enduring promise of hope. Until next time, may you walk in the assurance of God's covenant and the faith that sustained Noah through the storm.